Welcome to the Cowboy Office Show. Your co-hosts are Jody Brainerd and Brian Dygert, reining industry veterans with over 120 years combined experience judging, training, living, and serving this Western lifestyle. The Cowboy Office Show brings you expert analysis and epic discussion on the sport of reining to encourage you to ask more questions, get involved, and manage change. Drop your email at cowboyoffice.com to be the first to receive updates and never miss an episode. Saddle up as we ride into today's show.
It's showtime. Welcome to the new Chasing 82 series. We're following the data and the stats of the Reining Open Major events this year. Welcome to Chasing 80, Brian.
And I'm Jody. This is going to be a great year as we ride along and uncover the open level and what it's doing in our industry. I can't wait for this. This year is going to be exceptional.
Well, we certainly hope so. This show, we're covering the Florida Reining Classic, has an open derby. Been there for several years. We'll be looking at the data from last year, 2025, as well as 2026. What happened just this last week? For the most part, the entries are pretty close to being the same. It's actually interesting in the finite details. We'll take a peek at each one of those because they did use the same pattern both years. It was pattern 15. 127 draws, but it didn't break out exactly the same. They had few more entries. And when you add them up in all the divisions, you had more entries, but same draws. I thought that was somewhat interesting. Now in Florida, they have 13 divisions in one massive draw. That's true for the open side. I think it was about the same on the non-pro side, but I don't have all the stats on it. But I think when you put that amount of divisions inside a draw, the chore is pretty hard. All our data, all our stats is staying focused. We're not looking at all the other divisions that are offered in the Open Derby. We're looking at level 1 through level 4. So these guys had 4 levels in the Open Derby. $38,000 added money last year, $46,000 this year, 10% increase in added money, with a total purse being $81,000 last year and $94,000 this year, which was a 16% increase in the purse. I'll show you what the entries look like. Here's the entries from both years. In the level 4, you had 41 last year, 44 this year. Level 3, you had 44. The blue is 25, green is 26. Level 3, you had 47 versus 44. And level 2, you had 55 versus 53. Level 1, you had 35 versus 32. There's your numbers. 170 combined last year in those 4 divisions and 181 this year. So you have more entries in those divisions than what they had last year with the same amount of draws.
So, Brian, just offhand, do you know what some of those 13 divisions were besides just the level, beside the 4 open levels?
Yes, they had. Yes.
Just
Go ahead.
A couple from an example standpoint.
Well, they had a level 2 and a level 4 novice derby.
Okay.
They had a level 2 and a level 4 4-year-old derby, which actually compounded it because in their 4-year-old, they allowed those horses to be shown 2-handed in a snaffle or 1-handed in a bridle. But if they were cross-entered in others, then they had to show 1-handed. And so I found it interesting because in those 127 draws, there were snaffle bit horses shown 2-handed. And it does screw with the official's head. It does screw with the standards. It does make it harder. So I'm not picking a side, but those are some of the consequences you're going to get out of that. Now, on top of that, they also added category 6, open, intermediate open, limited open, and rookie open. So that's where the 13 different divisions in one draw comes in, and it gets a little messy.
Very, very interesting. And that does, since we've both sat there and we both heard points for both sides, 1-handed, 2-handed, and we talk about how difficult that is from an officiating standpoint to go ahead and mark those horses when they come and show back to back. And so those horses are cross-centered against a 1-handed horse. How in the world do you not give the 1-handed horse a little more credit than the 2-handed horse, and how much inside bridle rein is being used? And it's hard. It's a chore. It's a chore.
Correct. It's really hard. And yes, and there's no way, the officials have no idea. They've got an entered horse coming at them, and their job is to mark it the best they can, and they are. And you're 100% correct, because that 2-handed snaffle bit horse should be slightly lower on degree of difficulty if all things were equal than the 1-handed bridle horse. Absolutely true. And when I saw the first horse come in two-handed, it made me do a double take. And then I noticed the fact he's in a snaffle. And so then when the run was over, I looked up in the conditions. Oh God, they're doing that. So anyways.
I've actually done that sitting in the judge's chair and had a two-headed horse come in and turn my scrub and say, wait a minute, what is this?
Yeah.
The first horse comes in at two-headed. Is he trying to zero or is it what? So cool. Good information. Okay.
So I want to show you this one. It's just an interesting graph, only from the standpoint of, because I'm a little bit of a data nerd.
No.
Yeah. And this is just a scattergram, but it takes the key measurement functions of these 4 divisions in 2 years, and it just puts them on a scattergram. And when you look at this, it basically is saying you had another very good horse show. That's what no big growth, no big decline. And so you got your 4 levels, you got high score average, cut lines, and I'll show you a few more details, probability to pay. And of course they pay 15 places in all of them, but that's what it's telling you. And so when you look at it real quick, it just gives you a sense of what a given event is doing. And you can compare year over year really fast and really easy. That's all it really does. The fact that they added more money and they increased their entries, I thought that was extremely positive and very good. So cool.
I think so too. Wonder, and this is just a question because I didn't follow it. Where did the added money come from? The increase in added money? Did it come from sponsors? Did it come from? Do you have an idea about that? No idea. Huh? I don't either.
No, and I don't know historically. They had over 600 horses there. I know that from the stall charts, and because they're at the Jacksonville Equestrian Center, they don't have that many permanent stalls, so they had temporary stalls under tents. Now, I don't know if that's been normal for the last couple of years there or not. I know this show, because it's one of the first ones of the season, it's been a very strong draw. And it's true because it's also been offering this major event on the open and the non-pro side. How many people go dormant for the winter? Less in the industry than in our time. That's true. So they're staying very active. After the futurity, they might take a little bit of a break, but they're right back at it. And that's what this Florida show actually kind of represents and does. So I don't know. It's produced by the Florida Reining Horse Association, by that group. So I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, and it's a good show. It's, and here comes the question again. We talk about it yearly. We have so many horse shows now and so many good horse shows. So when you added money horse shows, is it, and we'll talk about the next one in line at the end of the show, but is it, again, do we have this many aged event horses? Are people going to have to start to select? And that's just a question for me. I mean, do you take a look at, as a professional now, and I have a barn full of level 3 horses, do I go try to get to a spot, say maybe in Florida, where the numbers aren't as big? No, the competition's deep and it's tough everywhere you go. This is a good horse show. But the numbers maybe aren't like NRBC or maybe like NRHA Derby, where the entry numbers are bigger. So do you think, Brian, that, again, this question, it's repetitive because we've talked about it before, but do you think the guys and owners are going to have to be or start to be more selective about where they go?
Yes, of course. I think the depth and volume of competition is steadily increasing. That's true. And when we look at the numbers, you're going to see them. You're in the 40s and 50s as far as per division. When you look at the marks, Annan Rafus wins the entire draw with a 225. Last year, it was 224 and a half. And the top 5 horses last year were 220 to 224. Top 5 horses this year, 222 to 225. So your depth is very similar. Your volume is obviously. The answer would be yes. You would have to be very selective in today's industry where you go. The good news is there's a lot to pick from. In our time, you had to go because that's all there was. Yes. And you had to just do the best you could. Even if you're shooting for 5th, you knew that before you left home, but you had to go. Right. So that's a big difference in today's time because the ability to select, I think, is a big one. The fact that you're talking now February, 2.5 months after the 3-year-old paternity. And to me, I think the answer, and I don't know this, I was trying to pull age and gender from those 127 draws because I would have loved to have seen how many 4-year-olds were there as opposed to 5 and older horses. I would just like to see that. Now I'd have to go back into the results and because they had a 4-year-old section, so I could kind of do a reverse math. I could do that and I didn't get it done. Could you hold off on those 3-year-olds, give them the break and, 5 and 6 year old horses that you didn't show in the last quarter of last year are coming out fresh. And now you go to Florida and be highly, it's those kinds of things is what I think is going on,
Right.
which,
That's interesting. And like I said, again, we've talked about that many times too, and that those 4-year-old divisions and guys go because they're going to go and they cross center just because they can. But you stop and think about that. This is 4-year-olds are just essentially, it's heck, they just got done showing 90 days ago for crying out loud. They're 3 and you go against a 6-year-old, you're giving up some ground. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and Sean talked to us about that. I think it's true. The industry can now separately, we can have 3-year-olds, you could have 4-year-olds, and then you have Derby, which is 5 and over. And Sean's point was, don't put a cap on the age. Once they're after, the horse will tell you.
Yeah.
So, and he's 100% correct. So I think that's where the industry wants to go. And I think they got to figure it out between draw, purse money, and show production. And they're not there yet.
Yes.
So when we look at the results from last year versus this year, I think it's interesting. Shannon Rafis is the high-scoring open rider in the draw. She marks a 225. We're going to show you some of the stuff, but I think the thing that's really interesting is she was not entered in the level 4. So she wins the level 2 and level 3. She's not level 1 eligible. So she wins level 2 and 3 in the open and has the high score, leaving the tie for first place in level 4, which was between Nathan Piper and Jorge Puente. And then I'm assuming that they flipped it because then they placed it. Jorge gets first and Nathan gets reserved. So it's an interesting piece.
And I wanted to, I talked to Shani and tell her that she's a horse girl, right? So she knows, but it's like, you get a new horse and you're going to go show them for the first time. And it's like, I wouldn't blame her a bit. You know what the competition level is going to be like. And you think, holy mackerel, it's Murphy's Law if that's where it's going to be. You enter the level 4 and you mark a 206. You enter the level 3 and you could win the whole thing, right? I have done that before. I've had a 2-day show back in the day, entered a limited open or intermediate and didn't enter the open because, gee whiz, there's Loomis and there's BH and the guys that were tough and Dick. And then you have a success for the first day. And so I've got to go enter the 4 the next day. And oh boy, everything turns bad, right? So no, Shadi, I think that Nathan and Jorge should send her a thank you for not entering, but I don't blame her a bit for doing that. That's just trying to be smart and show your horse to the level that you think it's at. But holy mackerel, she had to be good, really good.
Yes and yes. And I it's just an interesting piece on where we are because it's one of those scenarios where obviously Shannon didn't think that she had enough horse to be that deep. Right. That's the bottom. And the reality is she did. So
yes.
It's just interesting.
Right. Yeah. And fun stuff. Like I said, we haven't seen the last of the pair. I'll promise you,
Let me show you this real quick because this was a promo piece that she put out and it was on social media a lot. And it's just parts of her run because it was one run. And this is the horse that got to get the checks. And I believe they had just gotten it. So we're going to see lots.
Yes. I wish I'd have been there to see the run.
Yeah.
That'd have been fun.
Yeah.
Fun watching, fun showing when you get one that can show like that. That's excellent. I think she said that was probably her high mark too of her career, huh? I believe I read that. So that's really good.
Well, it's 74 across the board.
5, right?
Yeah. 75. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Cool. Way good stuff. So yeah, Nathan and Jorge, they didn't run off. So they must have flipped a coin. Huh,
correct.
Interesting there.
I have to assume that.
Right.
Only because when they posted out the results, they posted them that, Jorge with being the champion and Nathan being reserve. And then level 1 was Eduardo Gianassi riding Wesley Brown's horse, marks at 218.5. Those are your 4 open Derby level champions.
Right. Absolutely.
Let me show you this because this is the cut lines. So which is cut lines to paychecks because this is a one-go payout 15 places per level. Now this is level 1 through level 4, not all the others. So when you look at level 4, this is the cut lines from 2025 and 2026 to get a paycheck. Are you with me?
Yes.
So, last year was 2025 is 218.5. This year it's a 220.5. That's level 4. Level 3, 217 last year, 218.5 this year. Level 2, 215 last year, 216.5 this year, and level 1 last year, 207.5, and this year's a 212. The depth is stepping up. And that's where we're all going, which the quality of the horses is going up, the training is going up, the showmanship is going up. That's what's happening in the industry, not new news. It's just applicable data.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent. And I'll have some questions as we get a little bit further along about what we think from a maneuver evaluation standpoint, but that's for here a little bit later. We'll continue with what we're talking about.
When I show you the next piece, this is using the scale. And we've been talking about this for years. Literally years. But this looks at both years, 2025 and 2026. Now you had 5 judges each year, but not the same set of 5 judges. So they truly were unique when you have the officiating component looking at the competition. And for the most part, they're right in the ball game. They're in the same place. That's just what's going, and you'll see it because from -1 to +1, with the bulk of it being 0 to +1. And that's where our industry is. They used +1, 43.4% of maneuvers this year versus 41.2. That's the same number. You with me?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So
interesting stat too. It really is. So, okay.
It's just where that's where our sport is. It's where the competition is. The other thing that it does say, the officiating is very reluctant to go to +1.5. And I can't answer, is that because they're looking for perfection? And we learned that years ago, which is a bad habit. I don't know. It's going to creep up and start to haunt them because the depth and quality of competition is continually increasing. And like you were just talking about, you got 127 draws that are not the same ones as last year, which means there's a lot of stuff going on in the industry. And when we look at our next event, which is going to be Oklahoma's Open Derby, we can begin to look at that question. And you're not going to see the same horses. You're not going to see the same riders, which means there's a lot of them out there, which is great. I would just then say that the challenge to our officiating is it's got a lot of hard work to do.
Absolutely. And that +1.5, the word that we use to describe that is excellent. I will tell you, when you talk about this and we talk about it, at 25 years ago, we thought that they couldn't get any better. At that point in time, we look at a horse coming in the ring and showing the futurity, we thought, holy mackerel, that's a great run. And if we went back and we looked at that tape now, that futurity winner from 25 years ago, we go, wow, that would have a hard time making a non-pro finals now. That's just how far it's come. But at that time, it was equally as hard for guys to use a +1.5 for call a maneuver. It has not changed in this 25. I'm just pulling that number, but 25 years had to change. It was very difficult to get guys to even use a 1. I think we are leaning in the right direction because I think we're seeing more of the +1 or very good maneuver evaluations. But yeah, that excellent, I guess, doesn't mean perfect.
No, I know. And I know we learned that lesson, but it's a common thing that we all talk about.
Sure.
And it's easy to talk yourself out of it. I remember well the skill of learning to use +1 to split these things up. And then I remember the next step, which was the +1.5. And the difference was you had 1 or 2 horses in a given draw that were capable. And so you had to teach yourself how to start to use it when you start to see it. In today's time, we've got hundreds of horses that are capable of it. And by the numbers, the amount of +1.5s is still in the very minuscule, rare component of statistics. They are marking from 0 to +1 to separate these horses. And it's just not enough.
Agreed. Which is why we see a significant number of ties in our placings at most all of these major events.
Yes. The system, it doesn't matter what you do, the system is going to tie them because they're just getting batched up.
Absolutely.
So using the scale we did, I think an interesting piece. Do you think probability to a paycheck means anything to anybody?
I'm not sure from a trainer standpoint, from the people that are audience-wise or the guys that are showing horses. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the guys showing horses and the owners supporting the guys showing horses.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think anybody's looking at and paying attention to probability to get a paycheck and a purse, or do they just know what kind of level of horse they got and they think they can go get a piece of the money?
I think that guys that have good horses are eternal optimists, and even some, and they're going to go. They're going to go. And I think that you do have some, and maybe that decision that Shannon made on her horse not entering level 4 was along that line, probability of a paycheck in level 4 to her. Did that weigh on her? when she made the entries?
I hear you. And I only ask that because it's not hard to calculate the probability of getting a paycheck before you leave home. The cut lines, I think, is a piece that has to go into that equation. I know it would have been in my time. If I'm sitting on a 72 horse, I'm going to be awful lucky to make the cut line in today's time.
Right.
That's just a fact. So you got to pick a different class. You got to do something else with that if that's where that horse is, knowing where the cut lines are. If you flip it around, and I don't know if anybody in the industry, because this is what it looks like. If you look at the probability to making a paycheck in any one of those 4 levels, this is what it looks like. And it's pretty close year to year. And again, because you're paying 15, you got 127 in the draw, you're within a handful of being different from this year to last year. I don't know if anybody pays attention to that part or not, but looking at the probability and the depth of these derbies in any of the age events fascinates me, because if you're paying 15, your first reflex is you got 100 horses in it. Well, it's not true. You got 40 or 50 horses in one of the divisions. You're going to have to enter at least 2 of them.
Right.
It's just an interesting piece.
And it really is. I think that probability and probably, I would think that it would be in today's, I don't know how big that Florida pen is. Is that a big pen? We go to Tulsa, that arena is huge. If I have a 14 one hand, 4 or 5 year old gelding that's not the greatest mover in the whole world, my probability of a paycheck at that pen might be less than if I went to a smaller arena. And in that case, I think I would look at that more, what my horse would be capable of, rather than saying, yeah, I believe that I can mark this 18.5 or this 19 and get a paycheck. I think that the open riders, which is what we're talking about right here, right now, they're not just looking at trying to get a paycheck. They're trying to look at getting a big paycheck. So, you know what I mean? I think that
can I win it?
It's a small world. It's a huge world from the number of horses that we got. But if you think that guys that are level 4 riders aren't aware of what there is coming to a horse show, they are.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's kind of like back in our day, if we were hauling for a world title, we only had 2 horses that were going to be there, that we had to beat each other, because that's about all there was. Right. And now, like you said, there's 100 that, guys are known that are capable of it. We've said this before. There were 3 or 4 guys that were going to win the futurity every year over and over and over again, because they had access to the stock and they were great. And now there's 100 that could win the futurity if they got the right horse and walk in the pen. That's changed a lot. So yeah, interesting stat. That was a probability of paycheck. I'll promise you every other sport in the world is looking at that percentage wise.
I would think so, because it'd be somewhat normal, from a competitor and or owner standpoint, being involved in a given sport. I would think that, but I don't know.
Yeah. No.
We're going to go one more step, because score spreads is one of the big things that everybody in the industry commonly kind of follows. And we've been touting on the fact that it's minor in its real relevance, but accuracy is where it belongs. And then there's another piece that we've been following here, you and I have been, which is the direct statistical correlation between score spreads and maneuver accuracy in the score. And so let me show you first. I'm going to tell you something, because this is the maneuver accuracy rate. It's actually quite interesting, because look at blue is last year, green is this year. And so in every graph that we use, we've tried to stay consistent with those colors so that it won't get confusing. This one is interesting because the left-hand bar is the actual rate. So the accuracy last year was 56.4%, which means 56.4% of runs were error-free. And this year it's 63.5, which means they got better, increased. So their errors went down, their actual accuracy went up. And the errors is the next pieces right along the line. What are we measuring? Who determines the errors? We do. There is no rule. There's just a policy and a procedure. And you and I have determined this, and we did this years ago because these were obvious. And they were things that when we were judging together, we deemed as problems and errors, and we would work on it ourselves on how do we correct the errors. So the errors are crossing zero. That's anytime maneuvers cross zero. That means they have a minus and a plus in the same maneuver group across 5 officials. Maneuver spreads of 1 point or more. That would be a 0 to a +1, a +0.5 to a +1.5, any of those combos. That's what those numbers are. Multiple is when you have more than one in a run. This year, you had 10% of the runs had more than one error in them. And then the score spread is the two bars to the graph to the right. Score spreads, which is score spreads beyond 2 points. That's what that's measuring. And it's just showing you both the negative side and the positive side, which if you look at the positive score spreads, last year they did 69.1% of the runs were within a 2-point normal. This year it's right at 90%, 89.2. So significantly better in score spreads, but a pretty close to status quo in accuracy, which is not about the individuals. It's about the bigger piece, which is what we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
So
It's like I said, and well explained. We talked about that a little bit too. What seems, like I said, so simple to us because we've done it so long might not be so simple to a new viewer. I'm glad that you could go through that and had a graph to back that, which makes it that
right.
much easier. So I think that it's interesting from a stat standpoint that now, we have year to year to compare it to because it just makes things so much clearer. I mean, it's like, okay, here's what we did last year. Here's what we're doing this year. And if I'm officiating with a group of people, I'd be interested in that myself, from a stat standpoint. If I were still out there on the road judging
Yes.
horse shows, I would say, look, what did we do here last year? You know what I'm saying? And where are we at daily? I would be interested in that.
Yes. And so would I. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
100% true. The other piece that is very important when you start to look at our sport and how we do things is penalty application. And in today's time, they get to review major penalties. They are not reviewing minor penalties. And is it making a difference? And the answer is yes. And here is key stuff. Now, this looks at last year and this year. Total. Now, here's the good news. The good news in the sport, penalties are not splitting up the sport like it used to in our day. In our day, the first chore was stay out of the penalty box. And then the second chore was starting to control your score. But staying out of the penalty box was the big thing, right or wrong?
Yes, absolutely.
In today's time, that's not the case anymore because you're talking about 15% of all the runs are going to have a penalty in them, which is very small when you start to look at volume. If you had 100 horses in a draw, you're talking about 15 runs have penalties. That's not that many. That's very interesting, which tells you the movement and elevation to the sport on quality. Then you got draws, that's volume. But here's the big one, because your major penalties is the unanimous ones. You're talking about 3 and 4%. Of those, 10% of penalties are unanimous. The remainder of them are non-unanimous. They are minor penalties, and they are making a difference. Why? Because we're splitting hairs now on who gets a check, who doesn't get a check, who's fifth, who's sixth. Last year in the fraternity, 10th place versus 12th because they socialized the bottom half of it. So it makes a difference.
Huge. Yep. And that's absolutely the case. And it's still that penalty application from a non-pro standpoint is still huge too. And it's in the open level too. And guys, I think they understand that as hard as they run these things now and, circles, and for a horse to be able to fall out of lead for a stride, it can be expensive as heck. But, like I said, we've often talked about that. We have a solution for that, but it's like, to ensure that that doesn't happen. But until that changes, and I mean, we say that an official doesn't have to change a score. I've, monitored individuals that on 5-judge systems, we've talked about wanting to have everyone on the same page on a major penalty. And we've both been in situations where we've had, both from a monitor standpoint or a judge standpoint, or we've had a major penalty and a judge said, no, not taking it.
Yeah.
And four will and one won't.
Right.
So it's still, there's no, because that judge doesn't have to change his score, which is fine, but that can happen.
True. I don't know in the last 3 or 4 years how many times that would have happened. It'd be extremely rare if it does. I do think because they do hold those scores. They do make them go back and look, and they get pretty clear on major penalties, which is 2 points and above, because we've known that it does make a significant difference. And I think that that's all a healthy, good thing. This is my opinion. I think we ought to be reviewing all of them. But I think that there's even a more efficient way by which we could be very clear on penalties, because they're, in my view, they're absolute. They either happen or they don't. And if you have, it doesn't matter. If all 5 judges don't concur, then I think you got an issue. So if we said as a sport, there's an issue, they don't all 5 concur, what's best for the competition is a different answer than a mixed one. That's the point of the story, in my view.
No question about that. We've talked with that at length, and sometimes you talk to the wall, but it's like, it is what it is.
Yeah, but when you're just standing around and all that kind of stuff, and they still think that penalties it's just an interesting factual function of where the sport is today. The amount of penalties that are happening in the top end of our sport is going down. That means the training and competitors and showmen are going up, and it's in the minor penalties. That's where the gray area is. It's
Right.
just interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that half point on a card can make a difference. Shannon won this event with a 225. Was there a 224 and a half? There's a half point difference on 5 judges. So it's like, yeah, a half point penalty on 2 cards can make a difference, Can
Yes.
between
Yes.
first and second,
And it
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's what I thought as well. So do you got any questions or comments? What's the summary? You had another really good show. You had another really good H event, first one of the season, Florida. They all hit it and had a great time. There was a good portion of them because that nor'easter snowstorm hit the same day that show's over. So there was a number of them that needed to lay over in Florida for another day or two. So
Yeah. I'd still be there.
yeah,
No,
might
it's
be
a good
thinking
show.
about-
I think
selling and moving.
good show. I think the officiating was good. I think the show was good. Obviously, the ground was good. You don't have scores like that unless you do have good footing. So kudos to the Florida Reining Horse Association, because anytime you put a horse show on, it's not an easy thing. You know what I mean? It's not. So, and especially early in the year, so many people, because we have both been there, that you're trying to help manage a horse show and you're trying to get clients just ready to go show. And it's doubly difficult when it's in your own backyard, because you want to help and you're partially responsible for it because it's your sport. Florida, congrats. If I were still showing, I'd be there.
Yeah, I hear you. They're doing well. That's 2 years of very good quality, consistent work, without a doubt. Next up is going to be in your backyard.
Yes.
The Oklahoma Reining Horse Association will have the ride and slide. They're coming up right here within a week. I think they're moving in now, but the Derby will be Friday and Saturday, the 6th and 7th. And they have an open Derby. Now, the interesting thing with them coming up is they have 5 divisions in their open. They have 3 divisions in the normal level open. They have level 2, level 3, level 4. And then they have, I'll have to look it back up. I think it's a 4-year-old and a novice, which would make 5 divisions. Could be off on that, but 3 major, the 3 open divisions with 50,000 added, 28,000 in the level 4, 15,000 in a level 3, and 7,000 in level 4. So it's going to be interesting to watch and see what the numbers are.
Right. Yep. And that horse show it's just gone crazy. I mean, we started that years and years ago. It's just a Oklahoma Reining Horse Association show. And then Gordyville stopped their Derby and moved it to this horse show. And it exploded. The girls do a good job, well managed. It's a nice horse show, and it's in a good pen, a good facility, and yeah, it'll be deep competition, just like the one that got over with, right? So it's
one go. They'll have. I'm sure they're going to have well over 100 entries in a draw. Actually, their draw is split because they're going to do part of it. It starts midday Friday, and then the second half of it will be on Saturday, which I assume they did that because then they can handle whatever volume they're going to get into.
Right.
Then they're not pressed to try and put it all into one day, which I think is quite smart.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting and fun to watch. So we'll be back at it with the review on the Oklahoma Rein and Slide. It's going to be an interesting year as we follow the data and the stats. And don't forget to go to the Cowboy office, put in your email, cowboyoffice.com, ride along with us on this journey. Until the next time, enjoy the ride.
I will close with just a really, really quick story. And I'm going back so far that I can't believe that either of us are this old, but I'm probably going back here 60 years. And because I'm, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I can remember gasoline had just gone from say 30 cents a gallon to maybe 70 cents or 75 cents. And I can remember sitting in my house and there were clients of my father's that came in and everyone was just like, oh my God, what are we going to do? This gas has nearly doubled. And I can remember my father saying, horse people are crazy. they will go to a horse show if gas is $1 a gallon. And, at that time, it was like impossible for gasoline to cost $1 a gallon. Right? Well,
Right.
it's a different dollar now than it was then. But I'm just saying the same thing. No matter what happens, these horse shows are going to continue to grow because it's a sport that people love. And I can't wait to see it.
Yep.
Until next time, stay in the middle.
Today's episode is brought to you by 4D Productions in cooperation with the Consultment Agency, a full-service agency that helps bring forward-thinking equine brands into the 21st century using digital skills and services such as website development, graphic design, social media, and media production such as the podcast you're consuming here today.